welcome. You know, one of my favorite things to do is just sit down with a friend and talk gear. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you about the Epiphone Scroll and the other guitars in this series. This is an Epiphone Scroll 550 or SC 550. And there were 3 in this series, and they were made in Japan between the years of 1976 and 79. Now, the most affordable in the series is the 350, and the 350 has a mahogany body, a bolt-on neck, 2 humbuckers. Now, the 450 is an upgrade from that, and it has a maple body, a coil tap, so you can turn your humbuckers into single coils and just get a full range of sounds. And it also had a set neck, or has a set neck, they're still out there, a set neck instead of the bolt-on neck. Now, this is the 550, and it is truly the Cadillac in the series. It has gold hardware, block inlays, ebony fretboard, and binding. So, excellent, excellent guitar. All right, now, I would say that this guitar is definitely a product of its times. It holds a lot of characteristics that were pretty common of guitars in the 70s. For one being, it has a maple body. Now, I don't know if you've ever played like a 1970s Fender Jazz or precision bass. I mean, if you ever have, then you know what it's like to strap a big chunk of tree on you, because those maple bodies were enormous and heavy, problematic. They sounded great, but problematic, and they'd send people to the chiropractor. Well, this being a guitar, it's not so bad. I weighed this and it was approximately 9 pounds. So I kind of remedy that with a wide strap that has a lot of foam in it, and that really helps me. Now, with the maple body though, you get some really great sustain and tone, and I've owned a lot of guitars, I've played a lot of guitars, and to me this is the best sounding guitar I've ever played. I really love the tone on these guitars. It's incredible. My friend Rick, who's going to be watching this, he has owned vintage Fender and Gibson from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and he holds this guitar in very high regard. He loves my Scroll. So, you know, and I respect his opinion immensely because he is a collector of amps and guitars. Another thing about this guitar that's kind of a product of its time is the very thin, flat frets. And these frets are what a lot of people would call fretless wonder frets. And the fretless wonder was a vintage Les Paul that was released that had these frets on it. And it's something you should know before you buy the guitar, but really it's a matter of preference. Some people really like jumbo frets, and some people like these. I really like these. I can see with some funk stuff I'm learning more recently, where I'm having to mute like 5 out of 6 strings, it's definitely trickier with this guitar than with larger frets. But you know, I don't think I'd run out and have it refretted tomorrow, but it's just something you should know. Another thing about this guitar that is sort of unexpected is that, you know, being an Epiphone, and I believe they were made by Gibson at the time, you would anticipate that the scale on this would be comparable to a Gibson scale, but it's actually comparable to a Fender scale, which means it's got a longer neck on it than a Les Paul has, and the length is really probably what a Strat is. Another thing is this neck profile is very, very thin on this guitar, which I love that. That's one of the reasons I love this guitar. It feels incredible in my hand, but it is a very thin profile, and again, that's just a preference thing. Comparing this to a Fender Modern C, which is what most of the Stratocasters that are put out currently have. This is much thinner. This, to me, is comparable to another guitar that I own, which is a 92-93 Ibanez with the original Wizard neck. Not the Wizard 2, not what they're probably putting on Ibanez's now. This is very thin, like that original Wizard that they stopped making, I believe, in 94. So very, very thin. Which, again, it's just a matter of preference. I personally love that. Now, someone had given me some information on this guitar, and I want to read a page from, not a whole page, just an excerpt from a page of Epiphone, The Complete History. And it says that the catalogs kind of presented this guitar in a stuffy way. And this is a quote from the catalog. "The scroll motif is a symbol of superior craftsmanship." And then it says, "These were weird, cool-looking guitars with the upper bass bout carved into a scroll. Old-time craftsmanship was hardly the selling point, and after an initial splash, the sales of these scrolls subsided." I used to have a scroll website because, well, in the late 90s, I mentioned on my band's website that I played one of these. So I was getting emails, a lot of them from Europe and a lot from the US, asking about these guitars, because really in the late 90s when I mentioned it on my website, that was probably the only mention on the entire internet of the guitar at the time. So people were coming to me. So I put up an informative website with the information that my friend Dave Edwards had provided me. And well, why was I telling you that? Well, anyway, I don't remember why I was telling you that, but I will say that judging by the emails I've gotten throughout the years, it seems like this is pretty popular in Europe, and there were definitely some sold in the US, and I really haven't gotten emails from any other countries besides European countries. So what I would say about this guitar for anyone who's considering buying one is the tone is incredible. The quality, the action on this thing is like no other guitar I've ever owned. I mean, it is so similar from fret 1 to the 12th fret. It plays more easily and better than any guitar I have owned or played, and sounds better. And I've tried so many times to replace it because it's really long. You know, you've got a big headstock on a long neck, and I've tried so many times to replace it with something more girly, something that's smaller, something that doesn't weigh as much, something with sparkles. I end up selling all those guitars and going back to this one, whether I like it or not, just because it is such a high quality, great instrument. Now, how much would you want to pay for one? I don't watch eBay closely, but I sold a mint condition one of these maybe a year and a half ago. It only went for $500 and some. And that is what I've seen 550s go for and 450s go for. I see 450s go for even more than 550s. They're totally in the same price range. I've never seen a scroll go for 600 or more. But again, I don't sit around watching eBay. They may sometimes, but I've caught a lot of auctions and bought some in the past, and it's usually in the 500 range. Now, if you're talking about a 350, a scroll 350, they usually, from my experience and from what I've seen, they'll go for in the 300s and 400s. But when you consider you're getting a nice vintage instrument, the wood is settled. This wood knows it's a guitar. It's been a guitar for a long time. It stays in tune well, stays intonated well. When you consider that, the $500, $400 is a really great price for one of these. So I hope that helps, and thank you for hanging out with me.